Welcome everyone to the 8th Blender art critique video on my channel. So around the last couple of days of the month, people submit their artwork to be critiqued. And if you'd like your artwork to be critiqued, then you can submit your artwork through the Google form. I'll leave the link in the description. So people submit their artwork at the end of the month, and then at the starting of the month, I go through all the artworks and I figure out which ones I want to critique, and then I create the critique video. So here's the artworks that I'm going to be critiquing in this video. Now, I do apologize if your artwork didn't make it in the video. I'm not able to critique all the artworks, but thank you everyone for sending in your artwork. Now, before we start, I just want to remind you that I'm not here to criticize you or your artwork. I'm just here to give you feedback so that you can improve your work as an artist. And of course, my feedback is just my opinions, so feel free to disagree. Real quick before we start the critique video, I did get this artwork sent in, and this is from Educationaries. So they sent in this planet render and they wanted me to critique it. Unfortunately, I can't critique it because when I went into rendered mode, you can see that none of the texture data is there, and they didn't send any of the texture data. So I can't really critique the artwork because I just don't have the textures. I don't have the planet textures or the environment textures or anything like that. So this is just a quick note for everyone who does my art critique videos. Please send the textures if you have textures in your Blender file, because if you send the Blender file and you don't have any textures, then I'm not going to be able to have the textures, and so I can't critique it. Something that you could also do is just go File, and then go down to external data and then turn on the automatically pack into .blend. And what that's going to do is it's going to pack all the textures into the Blender file. And then when you send me the Blender file, then all the texture data will be within the Blender file. So you could do that. You could also just send the textures when you upload the Blender file. So I just wanted to note that for future viewers. If you'd like to send this artwork again in the next critique and actually send the textures, then hopefully I can critique this artwork. Alright, so to start off, we've got 3 artworks right here, and this is from Salvatorn. So Salvatorn sent in a few different artworks. He actually sent in 4 different artworks, but the 4th one I didn't really know how to critique, so I'm just critiquing these 3. So he sent in this really cool scene right here. It looks like these are maybe some little teepees or something, and you have these really cool trees right here. It almost looks like it's windy and cold, some snow on the ground, and then he also has this Coca-Cola render. Very photorealistic. I really like this, and I really like the droplets that you added on the soda. It makes it look very cold and fresh. And the rim lights that you added are really cool, really pops out those soda cans. And then you also had this artwork right here, and this is like a product render of some deodorant. Alright, so let's go over how I would improve these artworks. So I really think this is quite good overall. I really like the lighting. You can clearly see the product. And I like the colors, kind of a black one and then a blue one. The first thing that I would do is I would change the background because it looks like these words are kind of pixelated. It looks like maybe you just used this texture right here of the name of the deodorant and you put that on the back of it. But you can see that the image here isn't high enough quality, so you can see the pixels there. So if you want to render out a higher quality image of those words and then put them in the background, that would help. Because yeah, I just noticed that looked kind of low quality. The words on the deodorant itself looks pretty good because it's a lot smaller. But yeah, just on the background there, it's a little bit too big. And then also, I would just add a little bit of a rim light. You can see I kind of just drew this in with Krita. It might be a little bit too strong, but I just added a rim light right here just to kind of pop that black one out. Because you can see without it, it kind of fades into the background and you can't really see where the end of that is. So I just add a little bit of a rim light there, maybe on the other side, but especially right here where it's really dark. That's what I would do. Overall, though, this is pretty simple, but it does look really good. Alright, this one is a really cool artwork. I've been looking forward to critiquing this. Really cool artwork. I really like how the trees are kind of moving around a little bit. It almost looks like there's a strong breeze, and you added this cool effect here. It looks like a bunch of dust or dirt or something. Really nice environment. The trees are quite realistic. And you have this little hut thing here and some plants on the ground. This is really great. And I really like the colors of the sky as well. Now, when I saw this, the biggest thing that stood out is right here, this teepee, or maybe it's a tent. It kind of looks like a teepee, it almost looks like Jello or candle wax or something. You can see it looks kind of thick if you look there on the top. If you look on the top here, it looks quite thick, and also the material, it kind of looks lumpy, you can see as well. Especially in those reflections, it looks really lumpy, and also the fact that it is really reflective kind of makes it look like shiny, kind of like Jello or candle wax or something. So I'm not quite sure if this is meant to be like a tent or a teepee, but it looks really lumpy and kind of glowing, which is a little bit weird as well. So what I did is I actually grabbed some reference images of what I thought you were going for. So I found these images off of Pixabay, but you can see this is kind of what I thought you were going for. I think this is what you're going for. Kind of like a glowing teepee, and there's like a fire in the center, and then the fire comes up and the smoke comes out of this hole right here. But because there's a fire inside the teepee, it would be lighting up the canvas. And yeah, I think they use canvas to make this kind of stuff. Here is a teepee as well, and it looks like they use canvas, some sort of like tent canvas, but this doesn't really look like tent canvas. You can see it's all like shiny and it looks really lumpy. Yeah, kind of like Jello or candle wax or something. Whereas this, you can really tell that it's kind of a canvas or some sort of fabric. And I think what makes this look like fabric, this is a real photo of course, but you can see that there's all these like stitches right here, and there's also some folds. You can see like right there, little folds and creases, and there's like stitching. And you can also see that it's very thin. You can see this little flap right here. You can kind of just tell that it's not really that thick. And like the little stitching here as well. And on your one, there's that reflection, which doesn't look very good. Also, it's a bit buried here. It's a bit buried in the snow. I don't know if you did that on purpose. You can see over here, you can actually kind of see like the tent, the pieces of the tent are kind of like coming down right here. Now, of course, this just has like grass on the ground, whereas this has snow. So maybe you were trying to make it look like there's like a snowstorm and it's kind of covering up the tent. And then also, as far as the size goes, I think that it's too small. So you can see right here, it looks like there is like some sort of little hut right here, and this looks to me like a door. And then also there's another teepee over there as well. But this one looks like a door, and so if a door is that big, probably a person's probably going to be about that big. And so I kind of imagined if this person were to walk up, over there, they would probably be about this high, maybe even higher. And if they were that high, then this teepee would be very small and hard to get into. Maybe there'd be like a tent flap in the back of it, but you'd kind of be really scrunched. You'd have to like curl up and you could barely fit. Whereas down here, you can see that a person is probably about this big. You can kind of see the grass a little bit, and it kind of gives a scale, but also right here you can see there is a fence right here. If I just get rid of that, it's kind of dark, but you can see there's a fence right there, and that really helps to give perspective and show the scale of it. And also that tent flap there, you know, you'd kind of have to duck down, but then once you get inside, there's probably a good bit of room. A lot of people could like put out their sleeping bags in there or whatever, and there'd be plenty of room for a fire in there. So you can see this is quite big. This is probably like 3 people tall, whereas this one isn't even a person tall. Now, of course, I'm comparing that to this over here, this little hut right here. But yeah, if this is a teepee, which I might be mistaken, but if this is a teepee, then I would make it way bigger. And if you're going to make it way bigger, you'd probably have to move the camera out a little bit. So that's what I would do. I would change this material and make it look more like canvas, maybe even add like a canvas texture. And then I would also just make this way bigger. So just scale it up, make it a lot bigger, and then maybe even add some sort of opening so that people could actually go inside the teepee. If it's not a teepee or if it's not a tent, then I don't really know what it is. So maybe you could try to show that better, show what it is a little bit better. So that's it. That's how I would improve this artwork, but this is really cool. I really like the environment. Overall, this is a really nice scene. I'm really just changing that tent right there. That's the only thing that I would change, but this is really great. I really like the tree stumps and all the landscape and the grass and everything. Really nice work. All right, let's go over here to the Coca-Cola. So for the most part, this is pretty good. I don't have very many critiques, but there are a few things that I would do, more with like the composition and lighting and stuff. But as far as the 3D model goes, this is really quite good. And I really like the water droplets that you added. That's really good as well. All right, so the first thing that I would do is I would bring this Coca-Cola can up closer. So you can see, if you look kind of up close, this is a lot more in focus. If I can actually draw on this, this one is actually a lot more in focus. If you kind of look at it, you can see how much more in focus it is. But then over here, these are a lot more blurry. So what that's telling me is we want to look at this. because whatever you want the viewer to look at, that's what you need to put in the focus. So I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to make this be the main focus, and then these other Coca-Cola cans just being in the background. So I would bring this forward and maybe even switch it out for a larger can. You could decide, you could maybe switch it out and just see how it looks, but definitely bringing this to the front, and then maybe the other ones just bring them a little bit farther back so that this really is the main subject. And then what I would do is I would add a nice strong rim light to this Coca-Cola can, because really you want to bring the lighting to whatever you want the people to look at when they're looking at the scene. And you can see right here, because this Coca-Cola can, because it's blurry, that's telling me that we don't really want to look at this and we want to look at this one. But then you can see, if I just get rid of this little rim light that I drew here, the brightest parts of the scene are like way over here and like way up here and over here. But these are kind of blurry, they're kind of in the background, and we don't really want to look at them. This is the main scene that we want to look at because this is in focus. But because this is so bright, it's kind of fighting our attention because I kind of want to look back here, but then it's blurry. Whereas this is in the main focus of the scene, but then it's kind of dark. So what I would do is add a nice strong rim light, and then I would make everything else a bit darker. So turn down the rim light back here, make it a lot darker, or maybe just remove the rim light. I think you probably could keep the rim light, but just like right here, that's way too strong. So make the rim light a lot darker for the background, and then make the main Coca-Cola can, really brighten that up and add a nice big rim light there. And also you could just brighten up that Coca-Cola can a little bit. I also just added this filter in here, so it kind of just brightens up the whole thing. I think that looks a little bit better if it's just a little bit brighter. That might be slightly too contrasty, but yeah, just brightening up the scene a little bit I think would help. So if you add a rim light to that Coca-Cola can, bring it to the front, and maybe also make these Coca-Cola cans in the background, push them a little bit back so that they're just a little bit more blurry. That's really going to bring the focus here, and also turning down the rim light right here because that's really too strong. It's super bright and it kind of fights for your attention. So if you do all those things, then you're really just going to be able to focus on one Coca-Cola can, and then these are just going to be more background elements. So really nice work, Salvatorn, and I hope the critiques were helpful, and thank you for sending in these artworks. Alright, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. So this next artwork comes from Nikhil. So they sent in this really nice scene right here. There's like an evening scene and there's like the sun setting. And then they have like a lake with a boat and they have some islands here. So this is really cool. I really like the lighting and the colors that you chose. I really like the evening light here, this orange and yellow and purple. And the sky colors are really nice, this really nice orange and red. And the perspective is really cool. It's kind of like you're in the boat and you're just like sailing into the sunset or something like that. So really cool artwork. It feels very adventurous. I kind of feel like I want to get in the boat and like paddle around and explore the islands. So this is really nice. I definitely have some critiques though, so let's go over that. So the first thing that I would do is I would move the perspective down inside the boat. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but it kind of seems like that. But right now it kind of seems like you're just floating a little bit up and kind of over the boat. So I would just bring the camera down and put it more into the boat so that it really looks like you're sitting inside the boat. Because right now it seems like the boat would end kind of like down here. So maybe you're just kind of like a little bit higher. So I would just move the perspective down inside the boat. Now these islands right out here, they seem very flat. If I kind of zoom in here, they just look really flat. It almost looks like they're just a cutout. And you can see right here, very, very flat right here and flat as well down here. So what I would do is actually make some 3D islands. And because this is kind of an evening scene and there's that contrast there, you wouldn't really have to go into very much detail. Maybe just add a very, very basic ground texture. And then also for these trees here, you could use Blender's sapling add-on, because you're not really going to see these trees in a ton of detail. The outline is the main thing that you're going to need to see. So if you use that add-on in Blender, you could make some pretty simple trees and they'd probably look pretty good. Let me just show you how I would add this in. So in Blender here, you're just going to go Edit and then go to Preferences. And then on the add-ons here, you're just going to start to type in sapling. Oop, I spelled it wrong. There we go. So you can see it says Add Curve Sapling Tree Gen. So if you turn that on and then you can just close the user preferences. Now what you can do is you can just delete everything, press Shift A, and you're going to go down to Curve. And then you can see that there's this sapling tree. So when you add this in, you can see it just adds a tree. And I need to delete it and press Shift A and add a new one because I selected it and that got rid of these little settings right down here. So if you click on these, you can see that you can actually like create your own trees. So down here, there's some presets. So you can see Blender just automatically creates some trees for for you. So if you want to just go through these, there are some pretty good ones. And then what you can do is you can also go down here and you can go to like the branch radius. If I go to branch splitting, I can just add more branches. So you can see if I add in like 4 levels, there's going to be more branches. Then I can also go to leaves and I can like click on show leaves, and it might take a little bit to load up, but there's some leaves. Okay, that's pretty weird. The leaves are all coming down. If I just go back to the branch splitting, maybe just turn this down to like 3 levels. But you can see what this is doing. This is basically a really quick and easy way to make trees in Blender. Now, they may not look the most realistic, but for your scene, this would be really good as long as you added just a basic texture. So if you just click on the leaves, you could just add a very simple material, just like a green material. And then over here, the branches and the trunk are a curve. So what you need to do is just go Object, and then just go down here to Convert To, and just convert it to a mesh. And then when you have an edit mode, you can see there's a mesh. So then you could just download some bark texture and just add the bark texture on there. And then you could just make a bunch of trees and then add that into your scene. And because you're not going to see a ton of detail, that actually probably would look pretty good, but it would make the trees look more 3D. And then also right here, if you just modeled a very basic island, then the island would actually come down and come out, and it would make it look more 3-dimensional. So that would really help, just because these really just feel kind of like a cutout, and it almost looks like there's like a shadow right there. So I don't quite know what happened there, but yeah, maybe just making some 3D islands would really help. And then if you set the light back here, then there shouldn't be too much light coming on the front. And it should look pretty good. And then the last thing that I would do is I would move the horizon farther back. You can see that it looks like the water just ends right here. And so it almost looks like if you just sail to the end, you'll just fall off the end of the world. So I would just move the horizon way, way back, just scale up that water plane right here. It looks like maybe you just added a big plane. So I would just scale that plane up really big so that it goes way back into the horizon, maybe just like a little bit higher. Of course, when it goes farther and farther out, it's not going to go up as much, but if you just scale it way out and then maybe even duplicate the islands and like move them into the background, that might help as well. And then just a couple little things that I would do as well. The modeling here, something looks a little bit weird. It almost looks like there's like a lump coming up right here. If I just kind of draw this, the paddles right here, they come up and then they kind of have like a lump up here and then they go down. So I would change that and kind of get rid of that. I don't quite know what happened there. Maybe it was just a glitch in the modeling. And then also the wood texture, I would probably change that out because it's very, very rough. You can see it almost looks like the wood is like rotting away and it's just like has these big chunks in the wood. So I would just replace that for some other wood texture, probably just something a little bit simpler. But yeah, that's it. Really, this is quite cool. I really like the lighting, and the reflections here look really good. I like how the trees kind of look wobbly. So that's the critique. I hope this was helpful, and thank you for sending in this artwork. Alright, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. So this one comes from Mochi3D. So they sent in this really cool artwork here, very grungy, really cool textures. I really like all the detail that you added, like these little metal pieces right here. And these pipes are really cool. And you even added in like some ivy right here. It looks like maybe you used that like ivy generator thing in Blender. Really, really cool. And the little papers right down here really adds a lot to the scene, makes it feel very grungy. And also the light right here, this is really cool. I like how the light is kind of lighting this up, but then the rest of the scene is a bit dark. So really nice work. I definitely have some critiques, but this is really cool. So the biggest thing I see with this scene is that it looks like you kind of just slapped a bunch of textures onto some models. Now I'm going to assume something here, and I'm assuming that you were kind of getting inspiration from Ian Hubert's style of creating artwork. If you haven't seen Ian Hubert's YouTube channel, I will leave a link in the description. So if you don't know what Ian Hubert's method is, basically what he does is he takes a bunch of pictures of grungy things in real life, or he just gets textures from texture websites, and then he just quickly maps those textures onto the models. And then what he does is he cuts out little details in the model and kind of like extrudes out things. And it's a really, really great technique. And his artwork is really amazing, so definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. He makes some really, really cool artwork using this technique. And also it's a very quick workflow. So for instance, something like this, instead of actually modeling all this stuff right here, he would just take a texture and he would slap that on. And I'm pretty sure this is what this is. So it looks like you just took a texture, and instead of modeling all the details here, here. It looks like you just slap the texture on, and it actually looks quite good. For the most part, this does look really good. And so that's what Ian Hubert's technique is, and so I'm just going to assume that probably you were using that technique. Now, Ian Hubert's method is really great for stuff that's kind of in the background or a little bit far away, and a lot of his animations are very quick and there's a lot of motion blur, and you're not going to see things very close up. And so it works really great for the stuff that he does. And also on Decoded's YouTube channel, he made a video. I've been using Blender wrong for years. Maybe you have too. You can definitely check out that video with the link in the description. But he kind of talks about this as well, where basically stuff that's very far away or in the background, just kind of things that are like scene fillers, you really don't have to spend a ton of time like making sure the geometry is all perfect and making sure there's not really any seams or anything like that. And it can really help the speed of your workflow, because especially if you're doing like an animation or something and there's some models that are in the background, you're really not going to be looking at it close up. Probably there's going to be some depth of field, and so probably the background is going to even be blurred a little bit, and you're really not going to look really close up at those kind of things. The problem with this method is that when you're looking at a final scene like this and you can just see the entire scene and it's kind of a high quality render and you're looking up close, is that you can notice a lot of problems. And that's where Ian Hubert's technique really doesn't work when you're doing a final render like this. He does a lot of animation work and his camera is always like moving around a lot, so it does look pretty good for the stuff that he does. So right away when I looked at the scene, these are all the different things that I saw. So you can see that right here, there's like a glitch in the texture. It kind of comes up and then comes over there. And there's also that problem right over here as well. Also right down here, this grate, it looks very flat. And yeah, it looks like you kind of just took a texture and kind of slapped it on. But because this is a finished render that I'm just looking at, you really need to like model the grate kind of going back in. Whereas right here, it just looks quite flat. And again, this probably wouldn't really be an issue if this were just kind of in the background far away, or if this were in like a quick animation or something. But because this is a finished render, I can really notice that that just looks like a texture that's just slapped onto a model. Also, there should probably be a bevel right here because this is kind of low quality. It's kind of like flat right here, so adding a bevel would really help. This texture is quite low quality. If you zoom in here, you can really see it kind of looks all lumpy and bumpy, so finding a much higher quality texture would be really great. Also, there's a lot of seams. Like there's a seam right here, and right over here also on the pipes, there's like a big seam right here that I noticed really quickly. And there's also like another seam right here. Now, as far as these papers go, some of them look okay. Like these ones look pretty okay. But then like this one over here, it's rotated over and it's very, very low quality. You can see there's supposed to be some text right there, but even looking at it from this far away, I can just tell that it looks kind of pixelated. And especially right here, this looks very pixelated as well. And it's like rotated over. And then also right here, like this graffiti here, it just looks like this just got slapped on maybe as an image texture. But if this were real graffiti that was like spray painted onto a brick wall, then you would see like a little seam right here, kind of a dip where that brick wall is. And you'd also see all this little roughness. All the little bits of roughness and bump that are on the brick wall, you would see that in the texture because this is really just paint that's going onto the wall. And then also right over here, this ivy here, you can see even from far away, you can see that it just looks like a bunch of planes that are kind of rotated over. It doesn't really look like ivy. Ivy has, organic leaves and things. But this just looks like a bunch of planes that are kind of like put on top of each other. So I think maybe use the Ivy generator, and I haven't used the Ivy generator for a while, so I can't exactly remember how it works. But I think what you might be able to do is like create a leaf and then maybe use that as a particle system instead of using these little plane things right here that it adds. So stuff like this, it really just breaks the scene. And again, Ian Hubert stuff, it's really good and his artwork is quite amazing. But a lot of his videos have very quick, flashy animation, and a lot of the things that he does like this are kind of in the background, so you're not really going to notice all of the problems. So that's what I would do for this artwork. I would just redo the texturing and spend a lot more time texturing things properly. For a final render like this, I can just really notice all the problems in the texture. Now, if you were using this in like an animation or just for something in the background, then I think this would be great. For something in the background or something in an animation or something that you're not going to see very close up, I think this would be really great. I think you did a really good job on this for something that would be in the background. But again, for a final render like this, I can just notice a lot of problems. So that's what I would do. I would just retexture this scene. So that's how I would improve this artwork. And again, you can totally feel free to disagree. This is just my opinion. So that's it. That's how I would critique this artwork. But thank you for sending in this artwork. It is really cool. All right, and this next artwork here comes from Camelot Lord. And for anyone who doesn't know who this character is, this is Azog the Defiler from the Hobbit movies. And you said that you started sculpting 2 weeks ago, and this is your second project. And you said, let me know what you think about it, and what can I improve. I have only drawing experience, and that's all. So you said that you started sculpting only 2 weeks ago, and this is your second project. This is really, really good for only sculpting for 2 weeks. When I was first learning how to sculpt, I definitely couldn't have made something like this in just 2 weeks. It'd probably take me a good year to make something like this, so this is really great. And you also said that you have drawing experience, and I think that actually really helps for sculpting, because when you know how to draw, and I practice drawing as well, when you know how to draw, you get a better idea of the forms of objects, and especially like characters like this. If you draw characters, then you learn about anatomy, and you learn about the forms and the shape of the character, and so drawing can actually really help you with sculpting, and I think it's vice versa. I also think that if you're good at sculpting, that can really help you out with drawing. There are just a few things that I would do to critique this, but this really is quite good. The eye is really good, and I really like the shape. I looked at pictures of Azog, and the shapes look really good. I really like this strong chin that you added, and all the creases right in here, like the battle scars that he has. The eyeball looks really good, and I really like the texturing that you did, and you also added in all this little detail here of like his skin, so this is really good. So the first thing that I would do is I would remove the floor, just because I really want to focus on the character, and I think that it's a little bit weird that like his bust is kind of sitting on this like blue floor here, so I would just get rid of that and make the background fully black so that you can focus on the head. And then I would also rotate the head, because I think it's better if you can see both of his eyes. So I would kind of make him not fully facing the front, but with like how my head is right now, I would probably make it something like this, so that you can still see most of the front of his face and you can see both of his eyes, but you can still see him from a little bit of the side. So I would just rotate his head a bit like that. And then also I would add some rim lights, because rim lights can really help to make the character kind of stand out from the background, and it can also help to show the shape of the sculpt even better. So you can see without the rim lights, and then with the rim lights, I really think those rim lights just make the character kind of pop out, and I really think that they help to pop out those shapes of the character and just make the character pop out from the background. So I would add some rim lights. But that's it, really. I have no critiques on like the texturing and the sculpting and the shapes. Everything looks really, really good. So really nice work, and thank you for sending in this artwork. Alright, and this next one here is an animation, and this comes from Peter724. So I will just throw the animation into the video, and let's go ahead and watch it. All right, really cool artwork, kind of creepy. When I first watched that, I kind of jumped when the robot went over and like, I don't know, shot that thing at you. And you also did my robot drone tutorial to create that drone character. So thank you for doing that tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. And you wanted me to point out anything that you could have done better, and you said that you were a hobby user and you started using Blender since 2.82. And you said that all the sounds and textures are CC0. And the hanger background was done by FSpy. And you also sent your blend file, so I'm going to go into the blend file and we'll take a look at it. Alright, so here is the Blender file that you sent. So I can see that you kind of used maybe like some sort of perspective trick. You said you used FSpy to create the background, so that's pretty good. From other angles it looks a little bit weird, but from the camera that looks really great. And I like that you added in some 3D beams here. That really helps, because then the robot can go like behind the beams and then go in front of the beams, and it makes it feel more three-dimensional. And the robot model, it's really, really cool. Let me just zoom in here and take a look at this. So you added in this really cool thing back here. That's really cool. I like that you changed up the tutorial and made it your own. That's really, really cool. And you also added in this really cool like gear cutter thing. And some of the animation that you did here is really, really cool. Like especially this thing right back out here. That's really cool how this just like opens up. And then like this cool thing here opens up, kind of like maybe a scanner or something. I'm really interested to know how you did the animation because this is really, really cool. It almost looks like some sort of like fan or some sort of like scanning device or something. It's really, really cool. I don't quite know how you did the animation, but it's really well done. Alright, so here we go. This is how you created that animation. I still don't know how you did this. That's really cool. So you rigged this to those little plates, and then as you rotate this, it kind of slowly opens. I don't quite know if you use object constraints or maybe used a modifier or something. Yeah, I have no idea how you did this, but this is actually really cool. I'd be interested to know how you rigged this, so if it's not too complicated to explain, maybe you could just write in the comments how you did this. So the first thing that I would do is I would move the camera to a standing height because right now it almost seems like you would be crawling on your belly in this warehouse because of how close the ground is. So it kind of looks like you're like crouching on the ground, or not even crouching. You'd probably have to be laying down on your belly to be this close to the ground. So I would like move that up. And if you were going to move out, and if you were going to move up the camera, then you would probably have to change the background because now the perspective is a bit messed up. So I don't know exactly how you would do that. A person would probably be standing. If a person were standing up, they'd probably be more like this high. So maybe you could just move the camera up and that might look fine. And also you have like this head bob here, which I think looks really good. Kind of makes it look like you're like walking through this warehouse. And so I really like that. That looks really good. But then you kind of have the camera be perfectly still. And so what I would do is I would actually take that head bob and put it through the entire animation. And that way it'll just be more realistic, kind of like a person is kind of standing. Now the robot, it almost looks like he's like a security robot kind of looking around, and then he kind of like detects something. And right here, he kind of gets on alert, but he doesn't really move his head around. And I think probably he would be like maybe looking for something, like what was that sound that he heard? And he'd be like looking around. So I would say actually rotate his head and kind of animate that, kind of make him like looking around, glancing around. I think that would help. And then right here, it almost looks like he like sees you and comes over. What I would do is see how he like gets all alert right here. I would say do the same thing again right when he sees you. So like kind of like right here, I would have like the light turn red and have all of his little gadgets like come out right there as well. And then my last critique is that I would add more story to this animation. So I don't quite really know what's happening, but what I think is happening is maybe you're like sneaking into this warehouse. Maybe you're like a spy or an agent or something, and you're trying to like, I don't know, get some special papers or something and steal them from the warehouse. And then maybe there's like this security robot that's like going around and making sure there are no intruders or something. So maybe what you could do is you could like have some sort of like hallway and have the character like walking through the hallway and kind of glancing over and then maybe seeing the security robot and then like run by. And then maybe you could have the security robot almost see you, but you like duck behind like a brick wall or something. Of course, you can really create whatever story you want, but that's kind of what I was imagining. Maybe you were like some agent like going into this warehouse trying to like find some information, and then this was maybe like a security robot just on his patrol. So that's what I would do. I would just add more story to the animation. It is really cool, but it doesn't really make sense that you, the character, kind of walking, that you would just stand right here and just watch the robot go by. I would probably make a little bit more of a story, maybe make you walking, or maybe make the character walking around, hiding behind some crates or something, and then maybe have like some sort of security robot like this trying to find you. But really cool animation. This is really cool. So thank you for sending in this artwork. Alright, and this next one comes from Zencast5. So they sent this low poly car here. Really nice work. I like the stylized low poly feel to it. It has a really nice style. And you said, this is a work in progress. I need help with how to make the rear view mirror and the windshield wipers. And you also provided the Blender file. So let's go into the Blender file and check it out. All right, so here is your Blender file. And so you said you wanted help modeling the windshield wipers and the rear view mirror. Because this is a low poly scene, it shouldn't be too hard to do. So what I would do is just press Shift C to send another 3D cursor. And then I would press Shift A and add a cube. And then I would just tab into edit mode and press G to grab, click with my middle mouse, move it over. And then I could also add the mirror modifier so that it mirrors it over to the other side. And then I would just kind of scale this down, put it into place right over here. I would also kind of squish it down like this and also pull it out a little bit and then just make it a lot smaller. And then just kind of stick it into place there. And then what I would do is press Ctrl R, add 2 loop cuts, and then just select this face. And I would just like extrude this kind of coming down into the car, something like that, pretty basic. And then also I would probably add some loop cuts here, just kind of pop that up and maybe pop this down and bring this out a little bit, just so that it's a little bit more circular. And then also right here, I would probably just select all of these and press I to inset that, and then E to extrude and bring that back. And then maybe just scale the whole thing down, stick it into place right there. All right. And then I would add that car body. There we go. And then for the mirrors here, I would just select all these and then just click on plus here, click on new. We can just call it mirror. And then I would just turn the metallic all the way up and the roughness all the way down and assign that. So that way it's like a mirror. And then also if you wanted to, you could like maybe pull this out. I'm not quite sure if that would look good or not. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. Now you also wanted help with the windshield wipers. Personally, I probably wouldn't add windshield wipers because that just adds more complexity to the model, and low poly models usually take away a lot of detail because there's a lot of things that you don't have here, like the license plate, and there's also like all the stuff inside and like a little cutout for the door. So when you're doing low poly stuff, you kind of just want to show the most important things, but take out a lot of the details. So I probably wouldn't add windshield wipers. But if you wanted to add windshield wipers, I would probably just add like a cube, bring it up, kind of scale it down, and then I would probably just kind of rotate it over, tab into edit mode, and maybe I'd just bring this up, kind of extrude it and rotate it. I wouldn't want to make it too complicated. Because this is a low poly model, I would just want to keep it pretty simple. So I would probably just do something like that, maybe scale this in a little bit, and then I'd probably just rotate these over and kind of stick them onto the windshield, something probably like that, maybe rotate it down a little bit, and then I would probably just duplicate that and move it over. And that way also, if you want to animate them, if you just set the origin point right there, you can kind of just rotate these. If you want to set the origin point to right there, what you could do is just add a loop cut, bring it down, and then press Shift S, and then click on cursor to selected. Then you can tab into object mode, and then what you would do is you would go to object, set origin, and then origin to 3D cursor. And then that way you could like animate this if it was like raining and you wanted them to be like cleaning off the window. But that's what I would do, just something like that. And then as far as the material goes, I would probably just set it to kind of like a gray color. But personally, I probably wouldn't add windshield wipers just because I want it to be pretty simple, keep it that low poly style. Now, if you wanted to critique on the general scene, it is very dark. Maybe you are going for kind of a dark feel, but what I would do is I would just scale this out so it's bigger. And then what I would do is I would change this to maybe like a bit brighter so it kind of looks like a street. And then also I would tab into edit mode and like add a couple of loop cuts. And then right here, I would add a new material and I'd probably make it like a green color for grass. And then I would just like assign that. And that way it looks a little bit more like grass on the side of the road. And then also I would probably move the camera a little bit more down here, something like that. And so that you can see a little bit more of the horizon, just something like that I think looks better. And then also the scene is very dark. So I would probably add in like an HDRI or something. So if I just go to the world here, click on this and change this to environment texture, I could open something up. And I'm just going to grab this HDRI right here. This is the abandoned hopper terminal, 1K HDR, and this is on HDRI Haven. I just thought that one might look good. And then I'm in rendered mode here. So you can see this is an Eevee, and so it doesn't look quite as realistic. To make Eevee look more realistic, what you can do is you can turn on the ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and motion blur. That stuff could all help. Also the world strength here, I might just turn that down a little bit because it's a little bit bright. And then let me just play around with this. Now, if I change this to like a sunlight, that's way too bright, but maybe a sunlight would look better, just that it looks more like a daytime scene. Maybe turn that up a little bit, something like that. I think that would just help the scene a little bit. It just looks a lot more welcoming and you can see the car better. So that's it. I hope this critique was helpful and thank you for sending in this artwork. Alright, and this next artwork comes from Limitless Productions. So they sent in this really cool sci-fi crate thing. This is really, really cool. I like this little glowing orange thing right here, and you added in some really nice textures like this little 6 and the 0 there. And this little tube here is really, really cool, and I like the little scratches and everything that you added. Nice details, the little bolts right here, and that little bevel thing cutting in. And there's some cool glowing orb things, maybe like some power or electricity or something. And you got some cool sci-fi glowing blue words. So this is really, really cool, and great job on this. The only critique that I have about this is what exactly is it? So I just don't really know what it does. I don't really know its purpose. It is really, really cool. I was thinking maybe it was some sort of like inspector robot, because it says area 239 inspected, and then it has this little thing here. Maybe this is like a camera or some scanner or something. But if it were some sort of inspector robot, it would probably need some way to move around. So maybe it would need like some legs or some jets or something, but it doesn't really have that. So I just don't really know exactly what it is. Maybe it's just some cool sci-fi crate that could be in the background of a scene or something. It would probably look fine if it were just like some crate or something that was in the background of a sci-fi scene, but it's dead center in the middle of the scene, and I just don't really know what it is. So if you could make the design so that it has some sort of purpose, like maybe if it were some inspector robot, maybe it could have legs or some arms, or maybe if it were some kind of weapon, you could have some sort of controller so that you could like shoot things out of this or something. I just don't really know what it is, so that's what I would do. I would just change the design so that you can understand what it is. So thank you, Limitless Productions, for sending in this artwork. Alright, and the next artwork is this really creepy scene here, and this is from Gutham Krishma. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. And you said, this is my first fantasy environment design, which is my own creation. It would be greatly appreciated if you could give me some feedback on the aspects that you feel I need to work on. So this is a really, really cool scene. You have like this character here, and it looks like he has like a bow and some arrows, and he's kind of like walking into this like creepy forest swampy scene, and there's like these two big skulls here. There's like a big one here and another big skull here. I don't quite know if he is supposed to be like a miniature character, or maybe these are like skulls from like some giants or something, or maybe they're like some rocks that were like carved into skulls. But yeah, it's really, really cool, and you got this nice tree here, and I really like the background. The colors are very nice. It looks very creepy and misty. And then you have this really creepy scorpion here kind of standing on top of the skull. And you also added a wireframe. So right down here, I'll bring down the wireframe. I don't quite know why everything is triangulated. It looks like maybe you triangulated everything. I really don't know why that is. If this was like a sculpt, then that would make sense, but I don't know why the tree and the scorpion and the character, I don't know why they're made out of triangles. Usually it's better to have four-sided faces. So if you could do that, that would be better, but it doesn't make too much of a difference. But if you could have four-sided faces, that would be better. All right, so let's go over how I would critique this. So the first thing that I noticed is that there were some glitchy branches. It almost looks like there's like some floating bits right there. I don't really know what this is or how it got there. It almost looks like maybe it was like a photo scan and there was just some glitches there. You can see right in here is the tree, and then here are the little glitchy bits. Now, I don't think this is a photo scan, because photo scanning a tree like this would be really hard. Maybe you sculpted it, but yeah, I just don't really know why there's all these little glitchy bits here. So how you could get rid of this is tabbing into edit mode on the tree and then hovering your mouse over this and pressing L. And what L is going to do is it's going to select all of the linked vertices, so it'll just select all the tree. Then what you can do is you can press Control I, and that's going to invert the selection. So instead of it selecting just the tree, it's going to select all these pieces that are floating, and then you can just delete them. And that should get rid of all those glitches. You also have some glitches over here. So just getting rid of that, that would be great, because yeah, it just kind of looks like there's some floating bits here, and that doesn't really make sense. And then the other thing that I saw with this scene is that the leaves look very, very big, and the plants also look quite big too. So you can see this almost just looks like one leaf, and that leaf, if you were to like stand that leaf upright, it'd probably be like this big or something. This is a terrible drawing of a leaf. I'm drawing with my mouse. But you can see like maybe the leaf would be like that big. It's just a really, really big leaf. You have these giant pieces here. And they also look very low poly and a little bit glitchy. So I can see like there's some really sharp points like there and there. Some sharp points there, especially right here. This looks quite sharp. And then also the plants here. The plants look very big. Like those are some really, really big leaves there. Those plants, it looks like those plants should probably only be like that big. Like, again, a terrible drawing, but let me just Try that again. If this were a plant, maybe that's like a little leaf or something, just something like that. Maybe here's another leaf. But yeah, you can see how big this is. It's like really, really big. So I don't know if maybe like this is like a miniature character and then maybe this is like a human head or something. Not quite sure, but yeah, those leaves look really, really big. Because of how big the tree is, I'm assuming that this is a regular sized character, but then of course there's like this giant scorpion, and scorpions aren't that big as far as I know. Scorpions are a lot smaller than that. But I do think this scorpion does look really cool, and also these skulls here, it kind of makes it look more creepy, like maybe he's in some sort of giant world, or maybe that, this is like maybe like some sort of mutated giant scorpion, makes it extra creepy. So I don't really think you'd need to change the scale on these. I think it does look pretty cool. It makes it more creepy, and yeah, this kind of reminds me of maybe like a mutated giant scorpion. So I think that's fine, but the plants here, I would change the scale of that, because yeah, those plants look really big, and especially those leaves there, you would like have to step way over those leaves, whereas really most leaves are like, this big. And you can see here in the wireframe, yeah, those leaves are quite big. They're very, very big. So I would just take all the leaves and scale them down. Now, if you scale all the leaves down, that will probably also fix the low poly glitches. It's kind of hard to see, but in some places it just looks really, really sharp. Especially right here, you can see there's some really sharp points, and that doesn't really look very organic. But if you scale the leaves down and add a lot more leaves, so just scale the leaves way down and kind of duplicate them and make a lot more of them, so that, maybe like the leaves are all like about this big, then I think it would be small enough that you wouldn't really notice those glitches there. So that's what I would do. And the plants as well, I would probably scale those down. These plants, I think these are fine. There are bushes that are definitely this big, so I think those plants are fine. But that's it. I didn't have very many critiques. This is really quite cool. Very realistic. I really like the tree here. The character is really good. You can tell that it's a character clearly, because you can see there's like the head there and the arms, but then it's kind of blurred out, and it draws your attention to this because he's kind of looking up here, and also this is dark, whereas this is brighter. And also it really helps to draw the attention to this scorpion because you can clearly see the shape there. So this scorpion is in focus, but also because the background is lighter here, it gives a nice silhouette of the scorpion. But also the light is mainly like right here, the brightest part. So that looks really cool. So yeah, really nice composition. The lighting is really cool. Looks very creepy. But yeah, this is really nice work, and thank you for sending this in. All right, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. So this next artwork comes from Kadir Dad. So they sent in this really cool scene here with this snack bar. Really cool. I really like the textures right here. You got like hot foods. It looks like there's like some chicken and some other stuff with some bacon. I really like the texture that you use here. This is really cool. And you added in a lot of detail here. Like you added in like the ketchup and mustard, and maybe this is like a teapot or something. And you got these little pots here and all these little details back in here, like this pot and like the plate here. That's really, really cool. And it's on the side of the road, because you can see there's a road here. So it's maybe is the kind of thing where you'd just be walking by and you'd get like a snack at this snack bar. I definitely have some critique, so let's go over that. So the first thing that I was thinking about is, are you going for more of a realistic feel or more of a low poly feel? Because with how strong the depth of field is, it kind of seems like maybe you are going for one of those really small like miniature feels where like everything is low poly and the scene is very small, and so you have a strong depth of field. I wasn't quite sure if you're going for that or maybe realistic. Why I thought maybe you were going for realistic though is because you have some textures here which are very realistic. So you have like this wood texture here and this street texture, very, very photorealistic, and the ground right here and the brick background. So I'm not quite sure if you're going for more of a low poly stylized feel or more of a realistic feel. So I would say just choose one and then go for it. Because right now it seems like you're kind of battling in between. You have all these textures here, but then like the snack shop is kind of a low poly basic yellow texture. Now, if you were going more for a realistic scene, then I would move the camera down to a person's height so that it seems like maybe you're just like walking up to the snack bar, because with how high it is, you'd kind of have to be like standing up on maybe like a small building or something, or standing up on a ladder, and you're kind of looking down. But with how high a person is, the snack shop is like this big, so a person would probably be like this big. Something like that. But then with how high the camera is, it seems like maybe you're like standing up on a ladder or something. Now again, if you're going for the low poly style, then I think that's really great and you could just keep it that high up. But if you're going for realism, then I would move it down a bit. Now, right here, this little checkered thing, it really doesn't fit because all around it, you have all these realistic textures. You have this texture right here, which is very realistic, these textures, and this has like a wood texture and the background here with the bricks. But then you have this very like stylized texture right here, kind of this black and white thing on the curb. And it just doesn't really fit, especially in between these two realistic textures. So again, if you're going for realism, then I would say change this out for maybe just like a concrete texture. But if you're going for more of a stylized low poly feel, then I would say keep this and then change these textures to be more stylized. Now this texture right here, it looks very wet because you can see there's like that big reflection there. It just looks very wet. You can kind of see the reflection right here. But then the rest of the scene looks very, very dry. It looks like maybe it's just like a sunny day, maybe a sunny morning, but then this looks really wet. So I don't know exactly what happened here. I would say if you want to make it look like a wet scene, then go ahead and like add maybe some little puddles and stuff like that. But if you don't want it to look like a wet scene, then I would say take this texture and go into the materials and just change the roughness so that it's more rough. Because yeah, with how shiny it is, it looks like it just like maybe like rained and it's really wet. So I'd say just make that less rough and then it won't look as wet. Now the texture on the roof here, I really think this needs to be changed because it looks like you used one of those textures where there's like some tiling roof. But the problem with a tiling roof on this texture is that this almost looks like a metal piece, like a metal roof, and it has these little grooves right in here. And with a tiled roof, there's going to be these pieces of tiles, and they're going to be laying over each other. But then to have these big grooves right in here, that just doesn't really make any sense. This seems like maybe it would be like a metal roof with like these grooves here. So again, I'd say either do one or the other. I would say probably just change out this texture for some sort of metal texture, or if you did want to have tiles, then I would say get rid of these grooves right here. And then the last thing is maybe adding a texture to the yellow color, because again, if you're going for realism, then it doesn't really make sense that this is very, very shiny and smooth. It doesn't have any dirt at all. You know, the rest of the scene has a lot of texture detail. There's texture up here, texture down here, but then the yellow parts right here on the snack bar, it's very, very smooth. It's like perfectly clean. It doesn't have any smudges or grunge or anything. So I'd say maybe add some very basic like dirt texture, maybe add some dirt on the bottom here, or just something to make it look slightly dirty because it's very, very smooth and shiny and it doesn't have any dirt on it. But again, if you were going for more of a low poly feel, then I would say this material is great and you would just need to change everything else from these textures to more like a stylized thing. So that's it. That's what I would do to improve the scene. The scene is very interesting. I really like the modeling you added in here. Really great stuff. So that's it. Thank you for sending in this artwork and I hope the critique was helpful. So that's going to be it for this critique video. Thank you everyone for watching and I hope the critiques were helpful. I'm trying to make Blender content for a living, so if you'd like to support what I do, I'll have links in the video description to my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. I'd really appreciate the support. And again, if you'd like your artwork to be critiqued in the next art critique video, I make one art critique video at the starting of every month, so you can submit your artwork through the Google form. The link is in the video description. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was helpful, and I will see you in a future video.